So welcome everybody. It's high noon here in Houston. It's 12 o'clock, so we'll get cracking. First and foremost, I'm taping the event. I think there's some invitations that have gone astray. So if you're watching this after the event on the recording, apologies for that. We will get that straightened out for the next time. But I just want to say a thank you very much for your time today and supporting us in this initiative. It's great to see so many friends that from before. In my past experience, old friends, new friends, and at Rev1 we're very keen to develop the community. We do a lot for the, I would say, systems completion, pre-commissioning, commissioning, operations support community, and that's part of CPS. CPS is the Commissioning Professional Symposium that we physically run once a year in Houston here. Of course, with the recent viruses, we've had to postpone, but we've got a new date now. It's October the 2nd. And Emma, maybe if you could type, the URL in the chat, people can go to that and see what it's all about. But essentially, we get together as a community and we discuss topics of interest, I would say, for our community. So October the 2nd, guys, if you're interested in attending, and we will be streaming it as well, just to get the community together and raise the awareness of our community in engineering, I would say. So yeah, I think we'll on that note we'll get cracking. This is a topic that is kind of near and dear to us all. We've all been kind of burnt with it before as well. It's very seldom budgeted for and planned for, and it's often way down in everybody's kind of list of priorities. So we've felt with all the projects that are being mothballed and cancelled and going back somewhat, we thought there's no better subject than preservation, really, to kind of raise the awareness within the industry about what it is, what it's not, and having that appreciation, you can go back to your work site and see what's important to preserve and what not. So that's the whole idea about the Lunch and Learn on Preservation. So we're very pleased to see everybody here, and we'd like this to be the start, not just a one event, but the start of raising the awareness within preservation within the industry. So just moving on from here. So the agenda today, we've put together a panel of experts. We've got 3 on the panel, which I'll explain to you shortly. There's a slide on housekeeping, just a quick slide on what to do and what not to do on the webinar here. We're going to look at the purpose. It's always a good idea on these subjects to actually get a definition, because many different major projects, everybody's got a different definition for the topic, whether it's systems completion, technical integrity, preservation. It's good to come up with a standard definition that we all buy into, then we all know what we're talking about. And then at this point, I'm going to hand over to one of the panelists who's going to take over why we preserve. He's going to look at the general process, a very high level process on where you start, what are the steps, and where you finish. And then we're going to have a look at some examples of preservation, some good examples, some bad examples. And then I'm going to come back and there's some actionable takeaways just to get you thinking about, in your particular instance, in your project, how you can apply these principles. And then I'm not quite sure how we're going to do this, but there's 2 ways we can answer questions. One is, if you look at the middle bar, there's like a bubble. It said conversations. You can type your comments in there. If you could try and do that, please. Just, I don't know, maybe just type where you're coming in from today. So Mr. Foster there, hi Brad. Maybe you could just type where you're tuning in from today, just so I can see the comments. And we can answer questions in two ways. One is we can stop and we can go on. You can unmute and we can answer the question, or we can read from the comments and answer the questions that way. There is a Q&A at the end, which we'll try and get through as well. So please type your questions away as you come in on. And then the third way that we answer questions is if there's a question that takes a bit of research, well, we'll take a note of that, and of course we'll always get back to you for that. So, and then there are some further steps. So anybody that's interested in taking this further, there will be some further actions and some further steps. So if that's okay with everybody, we shall begin. So the panel today is made up of just myself, Andrew, Rachel, and Ronnie Simpson. Just a quick introduction to everybody. So let's just see here, Andrew. So, you know, for those who don't know me, my name is Martin Cannon, work for Rev1 Energy. I'm the Chief Delivery Officer there. And, you know, I've had a career spanning some 30 years, really. Started in the North Sea in Aberdeen, had 22 years there. Then had, you know, good spell abroad, I would say, in the likes of the Middle East, Kazakhstan, Canada. Spent a lot of time in Canada, and I know a lot of my folks from Canada are here, from beautiful, Adam's there from beautiful Alberta, which is great. Spent 5 years in Calgary. Doing all the same, it's always been around systems completion, commissioning, and trying to get this message across that, you know, we are a very important discipline. You know, on a project, it's generally the construction that kind of carries the weight, and they always kind of, you know, push the way through, if you like. But we're here to say, well, we are equally as important. So I've been selling that and pushing that out into the industry for many years now. So yeah, so from Canada, came down here to Houston, joined Rev1, and yeah, we're pushing it forward, as you all know. So yeah, we're making some big strides here. So happy to be with this community. We're really keen on developing this community. So Malcolm there is joining from Halifax, Nova Scotia. Great to see you there, Malcolm. Michael, we've got from Cold Lake, Alberta. All my Canadian friends out there. And Ronnie Simpson, he's up next. He's from Bonnie, Scotland. Okay, Ronnie, thanks for that. And then we've got Thomas there from Houston. George again in Alberta. So good. We'll be doing a lot of work as Rev1 in Canada very shortly. So you'll be getting tapped up, boys. Okay, good. So yes, Andrew is he works for Rev1 Energy under Tracker Technologies, which is our technology branch. And Andrew's got an interesting background. You know, he was a US Navy submariner, responsible for operations and maintenance of nuclear power plants. He was the R&D manager for a government contract that was developing cutting-edge sort of control equipment for the Navy. He's been there from the boots on the ground. He knows systems completion and handover, and he's been largely responsible for being, you know, developing the specifications for our software. And he's worked for Rev1 since 2008 as a turnover coordinator, a DCS engineer, and a software developer, and he's now a director of Rev1. That's Andrew. You'll be meeting him shortly. He's going to take us through some software. And then Ronnie and I go back a long way. When I was a young quality engineer, I used to go and audit him, and he used to tell me where to get off. So I remember that very well, Ronnie. But no, I've known him for a long time. Time served professional engineer, is an NCCCR master trainer. So he's been over in the training industry. He's trained many people over the years. He's had 35 years of experience. He's an architect of the preservation system, really. And he's a member of the Institute of Asset Management. Many years experience in preservation. And yeah, he's going to take us through a few of the slides here. So that's the panel. Little pictures at the bottom there from LinkedIn. I think it's time that we all kind of updated our pictures, guys, a few years ago there. So just housekeeping, we're going to aim for 35-40 minutes. If it goes on longer, great. If not, fine. You know, about 40 minutes. I've muted you all, as you know, and we are recording, as I told you before. So I know we're at home. We've done that because there's dogs and kids and all sorts of things happening at the moment. We've got lessons going on, but yeah, we've turned off all the distractions. If you want to take a few notes, please write them in the comments. Write your questions in the comments, and then we can see if we can answer those questions later. We're going to have a Q&A at the end. And don't worry about taking too many notes, because all these PDFs we are going to send out to everybody at the end of the day, so you'll have a copy of the slides. So just to go over the purpose again, this is not a degree course, or it's not a technical college course really. It's just an appreciation. It's a lunch and learn. We thought it was a good idea when people have got a lot of time on their hands at the moment to raise the awareness. So it's to give you an appreciation of the preservation process. It's to go over some best practices, and also to give you some next steps. So it's almost like a starting point, if you like, an overall awareness, and then some directions to, if you want to find out more, well, we can do that too. A quick definition. So preservation, it's the act of keeping something the same or preventing it from being damaged. That came from Google. So the act, or a series of acts, is a process. So I'd like to think it was a process of keeping something the same or preventing it from being damaged. Fairly straightforward, but good to get a baseline. So in our terminology, it's basically to maintain the integrity of the equipment. And if you skip to the end of that sentence there, what we mean by integrity is of unimpaired condition. So as good as new as we can possibly get. So to maintain the integrity of the equipment whilst not in use. And whilst not in use, it could be in situ, or it might be determined, no, we're going into mothball state, we've got to take this equipment off, and we've got to get it into some sort of storage. And that could be a sheet of tarpaulin, or it could be a temperature controlled warehouse. All depends. So that's basically the definition there. And I think, Ronnie, if you can take control, you can come in and go over why preservation is so important.
Mute the microphone first, yeah.
We can hear you.
Yeah. Okay, good day to you all from your various areas in the world. So, why preserve? Well, preservation is quite important because we need to keep the equipment in serviceable condition until it goes into service. And that's basically it in a nutshell. The problem is that there's many jobs these days that suffer delays during construction, and that creates a longer period of time where the equipment is left perhaps unpreserved, and this leads us to equipment that won't work when it's required to work, which is, in small things like valves and transmitters, it's not really a big deal unless there's a lot of them. However, they do tend to take a while to be imported to various countries or sourced from one end of the country to the other, and sometimes there's waiting lists for supply of equipment, so that could cause delays in the startup, and that is a major no-no. So to ensure it's in full working order when it's time to be used again, to maintain the manufacturer's warranties and insurances. The process of preservation, I've given you 5 steps here: the scope, the plan, the action, how we check, and the handover. So I'll give you some key components within this step. During the scope, we're looking to identify our philosophy within the project for our approach to preservation. We need to know what it is that we accept we will preserve and what it is that we accept we will not preserve. And exactly what we're going to be doing in order to preserve that equipment or not. We must list the preservable items, so out of an IO of maybe 300,000, we have to decide how many of those tagged items are preservable, how many don't need preserved. And while we're doing that assessment, we have to look for critical equipment, equipment which is going to take months or longer to replace or to repair if it becomes damaged. I'm talking about things like compressors where there's a nitrogen blanket to be maintained within the compressor, heavy equipment that might be subject to brinneling or other shaft damage. And we have to look at the manufacturer's guidelines, use that as a starting point, and then lay over our project approach or acceptance. Every project has the right to create its own risk matrix regarding preservation. And then we need to do the routines. That's just to let you understand, there are routines that are done every week. There are routines that are done once a month or once every 3 months or 6 months or annually. So you may have more than one routine on a piece of equipment. It may be a visual inspection weekly or monthly, and then every 6 months, lubrication, for example. Then, once you've done all that research, you formalise the approach that you're going to take on the project. And once you formalise that, you write it up in your execution plan. That becomes the Bible, the go-to reference for preservation during the course of the project.
So Ronnie, just to recap there, so from all the tagged equipment, you identify what's preservable and what's not as a rough cut. And then from that list, you then do some sort of criticality assessment on that list. From your critical list, then you go into your manufacturer's guidelines and you create your routines, and then you write all that up into an execution plan, which could be a corporate preservation document.
Nearly right.
Okay.
The criticality side of things is no part of a sequence of moves. You're looking there for showstoppers, things that are going to delay the job by 2 or 3 months from starting up if they go wrong. So manufacturers' guidelines, you're going to look at that for everything, right? What is the manufacturer's preservation recommendations for a transmitter sat out on the plant, for example?
Yeah.
So that everything goes through manufacturer's guidelines, but the criticality is the real showstoppers, the big ticket items.
The long leads.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. So then we have the plan. And to develop the plan, we need to know how many items we expect to be preserving so that we can staff it up properly with the right amount of people, create our budget, our organisation chart, make a plan for any materials that we're going to be using or consumables in order to be able to carry out preservation. We may need to look at preservation in the yard or during shipping on board a ship coming halfway around the world with a module or something, as well as the final destination on site. So all of those items are part of the planning sequence, as is the logistics of getting people in country or on location in order to carry out those duties.
So from the deliverable from one scope is basically an execution plan with all your strategies in and all your routines in. And then the deliverable from two would be what? A manpower plan?
Budget, an organisation chart, histogram.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly what you're going to do.
Then you take that up to your management and get approval, right?
Yeah.
Proactive.
Correct.
All right.
Okay, so then the action, we carry out inspections. We have to document the preservation activities that we carry out. So we have the preservation guidelines or routines that we will be doing, and you'll have to make your decision in the execution plan. Are you going to sign off a sheet for every preservation activity, or are you going to have a different way to track the actions being carried out? We have the actions carried out at the prerequisite frequencies. So just a very small infringement on Andrew's part, and I'll say that the software should manage the activities that need to be carried out on a week-by-week basis based on the various frequencies of actions. Some may be 3 monthly and coming out this week, some may be weekly and come out every week, etc. So that's how frequencies need managed within the software. We need to gather the evidence. If there's a problem, if something's been broken or whatever, then all of that evidence needs to be gathered and filed for the final handover. You need to be talking to the regulatory authorities. You need to know if there are specific activities that they want to witness or inspect. And you need to keep records of everything that you do and the frequencies with which you do them and who did it so that they're signed off.
What's an example, Ronnie, of where you get the regulatory authority and what would be that? Pressure test or?
Well, you may have decided to mega test cables periodically. And some of the bigger cables, they may want to witness the results of that mega test, for example.
Right.
Or they may want to watch and see what the nitrogen blanket pressure is inside the compressor package while it's still sealed up. They want to come and look at the gauge as well. That sort of thing.
Got it. Yeah. Okay.
And everything is maintained and managed within a database. So make sure that your database is up to the task. Any other comments?
No, I think that's fine. I think Mike had a question there. Just type it into the chat, Mike, if you don't mind. But yeah, carry on, Ronnie.
So yeah, the next thing is the audit, and the client usually will audit the effectiveness of the preservation activities. There will also be regular site visits and walk rounds to make sure that things that are supposed to be preserved actually have been preserved. So you'll do a walk down of various areas in order to make sure that preservation is in fact being carried out as the database claims it's been carried out.
Right.
Some people are not really honest about things like that. You know, it's quite surprising.
Right.
Anyway.
And who typically does that? Somebody that's not involved in the process. So that's an independent check, right?
Well, it depends. You see, when you set your contract up, if you leave preservation with the construction contractor, then he sees it as an extra profit to himself. So he minimises what he does about it.
Right.
Just what you can get away with, you know.
Right.
So that's why you have to be quite cute with your philosophy.
Right.
So handover. Handover is about gathering together all the evidence, and I'll just break for a second and read this question. An issue I've run across in the past has been sliding schedules exceeding preservation timelines. Yes, I would agree with that, and that's an unknown, but it's something you capture in your philosophy and your execution plan, that you specify the time frame and how long the budget lasts. And if you can't, if your job runs a year or two further along than it should have ran, then you refer back to that clause in your execution plan while you make a claim for additional funds.
Right.
Okay.
Good question, Brad. Just unmute yourself, mate, if you can. If you just want to give us a bit of a background as to. If not, there you go. How you doing, Brad?
Yeah, doing great, Martin.
Good.
Good to see all you guys online as well as all the attendees. Yeah, this is just an issue that I've had in the past where I've had equipment that may have fallen within compliance within our initial schedule, and as our databases has obviously changed and improved over the years. A good database has these capabilities to raise the flag, so to speak. And when you don't have that, you don't have a mechanism that can let you know all of these pieces of equipment that are now out of compliance just because you've had a schedule delay. Right now, our industry is going through unprecedented times, so schedules are going to slide. A lot of equipment around the world today, right now, will be impacted by this unless there's a quality program in place, a preservation program in place that can raise the flag, so to speak, for this equipment.
Agreed. A good point, well made. Thank you, Brad.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. Good point.
So just carrying on then. So getting your handover in place, you need to be able to present the evidence of the activities that have been carried out in the preservation, put them together as a section to be added in the system handover folder for completions, and you need to also remember to get a signed transmittal to say that you've handed over that evidence, because that's an original offering, so it needs to be noted as handed over and signed for. And the last thing would be just what you've said there, slides and things like that. That's all comes under lessons learned, and get them back into the forum so that people can benefit from that in the future.
Yeah. Just throw it out there, Ronnie. This is the generic kind of process, but I know online there's people that do this. They've been doing it for a long, long time. So, anybody want to just comment on that? How do you do it? Is there some best practice that you can share? Just throw it out there. If put a note in the chat, we can unmute you and you can have a share. If not, no worries. And just keep going.
So our next slide is the preservation routine. It's not a per se preservation routine, it's just a sample, but it would give you a checklist of activities that need to be carried out. And I know this is too small to read, but that's the kind of thing you're looking for. And they're generally these days, they're stored in the database software, and you can print them out and take them out on the job, or you can have a book of them so that when you get specific categories, like you're going out to look at heat detectors today, what is the preservation routine on heat detectors, print one of them out and do that for everything, and then sign them off on a sheet. So that's and there are basically three disciplines. There's electrical, instrumentation and mechanical. And those are the three common disciplines that you'll find, although there are some things for safety as well, signage and so on. And we're on to Andrew.
All right, I appreciate that. Welcome everybody to this. I'm going to be running through the TrackerRune software. As Martin said earlier, my name's Andrew Rachel. I'm the U.S. Director of Tracker Technologies based out of Dallas. So a little info about TrackerRune and where it came from, how it started. My background is quite a varied background, but years back I was on a project where we got mothballed for a year. They kept some people around. I had a data background, I had an operations background, I'd done maintenance, et cetera. So I became the preservation guy just out of necessity as one of the few people left on site. So I actually went through what Ronnie had pointed out there in great detail. I unfortunately didn't have that kind of model to go with. So a lot of common sense and past history came into play, but it rapidly became apparent to me that that wasn't something that was thought of with the project. So it wasn't planned for and just kind of got dumped in my lap. So we ended up creating an Excel spreadsheet to capture all the data. I later turned it into an Access database and created a preservation system there, and then actually shipped it off to another plant that got mothballed as well. So that was years and years ago, but that left the thought that we need to come up with something a lot better than we had, and also to speed up the process. So that's where TrackerRune actually was born. It was years ago, and just a life experience type thing. The next slide here. So Tracker Technologies has 3 software packages. Tracker Plans Facilities Readiness Software. So it's designed to come in at the beginning of the entire project chain and then wrap up a turnover to operations, and just ensures that facility is ready to operate, meets all the regulatory compliances, and you can prove it. Tracker Checks the CMS software, so that's your technical integrity, and then TrackerRune. So that was it's our maintenance management system / preservation. So does all of that for us. The 3 softwares will talk to each other. They can communicate back and forth, or they'll stand alone by themselves. With the ability to communicate out, we can reach out to other softwares like Primavera or other data sources. So one of our core principles at Rev1 Energy is we make projects run smoother. It's our tagline, so to speak. But that's exactly what we do with the software. We look for opportunities to take existing data, pull it in and utilize it rather than repeating data entry, just anything to speed up the process. And that's been the core philosophy of our softwares. So some of the design requirements when we finally officially sat down and developed TrackerRune need to be affordable. So I've been on projects from wind farms to coal plants, combined cycle, LNGs, petrochem, oil and gas platforms. They all have a lot of commonality to them as far as how you do the process. But one thing I noticed was we always had the smallest budget. So there wasn't always room for all the things we wanted. So we wanted to make sure we made TrackerRune affordable right out of the box. So a lot of the design concept was to keep the cost down. Flexibility. So I just listed off a bunch of different utilities that I've worked on and whatnot. And what I saw was they're all completely different as far as what they're doing, but the concept of what they're doing is the same. So we developed the software to be able to adapt itself and work in the different environments. So it's very flexible, very customizable. Quick deployment, that was key, especially with Tracker Check, but also with TrackerRune. Some of the long lead items, like I said, I developed that preservation plan for that one project I was on, and that was not a quick process. It took a lot of going through the vendor manuals, a lot of sorting through, actually deciding what's going to have preservation. So the software shouldn't be complicated and hard to use and take longer to get the data into it than actually took you to gather the data. So on a lot of the projects I've been on, I've showed up 2 weeks prior to we had to turn over a package. it's usually not the latter, usually not there 6 and 7 months earlier. So we wanted the software to be able to be implemented very quickly. And then a simple user experience. This concept came when I was in the Navy. We used the Navy's PMS system, preventative maintenance system, and it's been around for 60 years. There's a term they use, it's called sailor proof. So it's hard to break. Yeah, you actually got to go out of your way to do it wrong. So we built TrackerRune on that core philosophy of keep it very simple. People in the field aren't database administrators. They're not developers or coders. So software developed for that group is, it's a mistake. So we developed it for the people that are actually going to be using it. And when we get to the slides of the screenshots, you'll see that it's very simplistic layout, very easy to use. It doesn't have to be complicated. And then a connected design. So like I said before, we're able to take TrackerRune, reach back into TrackerCheck, pull in the tags if you need to. I actually saw on projects where tags change once they go to operations, but you want to still keep that data linked to your previous data. So we do have the ability to do things like that. We have APIs that are beck and call, so we could actually tie into other softwares like Primavera, the scheduling software, or other softwares out there. And we have a ton of other ways to get the data tied together. So very flexible system. All right, so the screenshots, we're not going to go through 100 of these, and I'm not going to teach you how to use the system. I just want to give you a quick overview and show you how simplistic the design is. Again, keep in mind all those core philosophies of flexible, easy user interface and quick deployment. So step one, you gather up your assets and you load them into the system. They show up in the home group under the assets section. All of the tags have supplemental data with them, associated PMRs, child tags, photos. So you can actually go out and take nameplate data or initial condition pictures, and then you can take final condition or progressive pictures, and then parts associated with them.
Just a second, Andrew.
Yeah.
If you want to take over the presentation, you can. You're a presenter. You can.
Yeah, might as well go ahead and do that. Yeah.
The slides are there, you know.
There we go.
Right.
All right, so screenshot, again, I'll run through this again because I was pointing at it and it was looking great on my side. But on the asset information, you got the tags on the left side, details on the right, some tabs across the top for details, PMRs, child tag, tag photo, and then parts and BOM. So some core information you can capture. Data can be pulled in from the CMS system. It can be imported and exported via spreadsheets up here. We can use APIs to tie to data sets. The goal being simple and easy to get the information into the system. So the next slide is going to show the PMR. So we got 3 main steps. You load your tags, you load your PMRs, so you develop your PMRs against this. PMR is a preventative maintenance record, so it's what you're going to do and when you're going to do it. So it includes your frequencies. These PMRs, you can do a progressive method. So if you need to get preservation up and running quickly, you can use some common sense approaches. Motors need to be rotated. Switchgear needs to be heated with like light bulbs if they're de-energized. Throw some desiccant in there. Some common sense things, nitrogen blankets. So you can develop very quick PMRs, get the PMS system going, and then go back to the vendor manuals and start getting more appropriate PMRs and then update those PMRs as you go. So you can do it in a slow process if you want, develop all of those up front and then implement them, or you can do a phased approach where you need to get some preservation going, then go back and update your PMRs to be more appropriate and based off of the vendor manual. It just depends on your project and where you're at. So the next one, so we take tags, we take the PMRs and we tie those together, and that's going to be your series. So what that does is once you tie your PMRs to your tags, you give them a frequency. The automated scheduler takes over at that point and issues these things out. By default, it shoots them out for an entire year. And then when you get close to that year end, if you haven't given it a stop date, it'll generate the next year. So it's self-sustaining once you get it rolling. And you can go in and deviate these and change them and move them. You have min max dates you can add in there. I believe it was Brad that mentioned that what if you're going 2 years past or a year past the allowed maintenance period for that, what do you do? There's flags in here we can set to capture that and run reports against, so you could actually weekly generate a report to see which items you're getting close to. So big picture, these items on the left, you've done the core items. You've added your tags, you've added your PMRs, and you've started your maintenance routine. The next thing you're doing is just printing those out weekly or daily, checking these boxes, hitting print. So this is just the mass print screen. So you can go through here, group these, filter them by location, discipline, so you can break down the PMRs, how you want to issue them out in a manageable way. So if you want to send specific disciplines to different areas so they can work in that one area in the day, you can do that with the filters, check these boxes and print them. And then once you print them, they come out, like Ronnie said, in these paper forms. I just stuck our logo here, but this would be your logo. Every PMR comes out with a QR code, which helps with pulling it back in. So when you pull them back in with the QR code, you can scan in, say 50 or 75 of these completed sheets every day, upload them as one PDF. The system separates them out, assigns them to the appropriate tag, and gets them signed off for you. So real easy in and out process with the PMRs. The data that's coming out of these, this is based off of the Navy's PMS system. So it broke it down into categories and groups. The data in the background, it's in basically a spreadsheet type format. So you can export it out as a spreadsheet, manipulate it, and pull it back in as a spreadsheet, or pull the spreadsheet back in. And it takes that vertical data and makes it look like one of these PMRs. So very simple system, and it comes out in a very easy usable form. And again, the QR codes make it super handy to pull them back in and sign things off. We also have in here, since this is preservation and maintenance, the ability to do corrective maintenance. So you can raise corrective work orders against items, add their tag information, and it pre-populates most of the info over here. You give a description for the issue, give it a priority, any kind of status, and then you progress those corrective work orders. You don't have to use this system, but it's there if you need it. The next one is just the inventory system. So the inventory, we have the ability to load parts. You can assign parts to a particular tag for bill of materials. You can keep track and status of the parts with order points. So parts can be grease, they can be the actual gaskets, or even nitrogen. So anything you need to maintain these items. It's a full-blown maintenance management system as well as a preservation system. So you can mix and match how you need to use it, whatever is appropriate for your project. So within the inventory system, you can apply vendors, multiple vendors per part if needed, cost, purchase orders, sales orders, warehouse. Can be as involved as you need it, or it can be as simplistic as you need it. You could just stick up here to the preventive maintenance section for your preservation. Next slide. No good system's complete without the reporting. So we have some standardized KPIs to report against. So you can see your closure rates of your of the maintenance items you're doing, corrective work orders if you're using them. Plus we can tailor this to fit the needs of the project if necessary. So as you can see, didn't take me long to go through this. It's not a Maximo, it's not an SAP, and it was never designed to be. Those are very solid software options, but they're very expensive and very complicated. From my experience in the field, you don't want, for cost reasons, a expensive Maximo person running the system when you just need preservation. So we saw a hole in the overall industry, and we plugged the hole with TrackerRune. So it's a cost-effective way to get into it. It's very easy to operate. It's scaled down, so you don't have a lot of the fluff that you would have with Maximo and SAP, but it gets the job done and it has everything you need it to do. Our development software is a rapid deployment software, so it's very flexible. So tweaks to the system are pretty simple for us. The reporting is normally where those tweaks come in, but we can make it fit for your project instead of making your project fit around the software. All right.
Good. And then just, obviously you can survive without a database, but it'd be total chaos. Spreadsheets, yellow stickies, Rolodex. We've tried it, lever arch files all over the place. And once you lose that integrity of the data, it's very, very difficult to get back. So
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be
super
ours, but certainly use some sort of database for sure.
Yeah, and I've, like I said, I developed that one. It was initially based off of spreadsheets. It worked. We had paper copies of everything, and we had volumes and volumes of 3-ring binders. So we actually had an issue where a motor went bad, and we had to prove it. We eventually found the data, but it took a while, and it wasn't tucked away in the same binder. So the binder where it should have been. So it took me a while to find that with database type system.
Yeah,
it's right there. So you want to see the maintenance history on an item, you just pull up the tag, generate all the history items. Really simple.
There's a question just come in about mobile device as well. So what you've shown is basically a desktop, but what about mobile? Can we do all this mobile?
Yeah, so the paper PMRs can be converted over to the mobile format. We do have a mobile app that works with a tracker check, but it works just as well with TrackerRune. So you could be doing all these items on a mobile device, and a mobile device would be any iOS or Android device. It could be a phone, could be a tablet, could be a personal phone, the app's in the App Store, and you just pull it down. We set your project up with it, get your PMRs loaded, and you're off and running. Yep.
Okay, so there's some more questions, but we'll leave them to the end there. But thank you for your questions, guys. And thank you, Drew.
Yeah, no
Over
problem.
to you, Ronnie.
Okay, so that was a good rendition there, Andrew. Well done. And I'm glad you mentioned the maintenance management process, because that's one of the things that come out and bite you in the unexpected places. If they want to start a generator before it's due to go into service, because they need the power to feed some part of the completions or commissioning process, then that generator, for the few months that it's running, it's going to need a maintenance package. So you've got to then start cutting out bits of the tag list in order to put them into full maintenance before the maintenance management system's up and running. So flexibility like that's very important, and well done. So now we're talking, this is a bunch of flanges on the bottom here, and some valves and actuators on the top, and corrosion abounds. So that's the area that we're trying to keep safe and prevent that from happening. And corrosion in itself is not going to be a big problem until it starts pitting the faces, and then you're getting into wasted materials then. This one's a much better. It's the laydown area or a warehouse with properly preserved equipment, and you'll see that orange tag there. This is a great way to flag up to people that are non-preservation people on site that they shouldn't be touching this piece of equipment because it's been preserved. So if you keep a standard colour of preservation tag, then when you've been to a piece of equipment, you've preserved it. If you put that tag on, then it's much easier to educate the rest of the construction labour that that means something special, and you'll get into trouble if you start messing with it. So keep it simple, and it works fine. So Martin, over to you.
Yep. All righty. So we're good. We'll do some Q&A, but in fact, we'll probably just do that now, to be honest. We'll come back to the actionable items. So yeah, I just noticed there, Mr. Elliott, Mark, great question there on safety using nitrogen. I think that's very worthwhile discussing. I don't know if you want to just unmute for a minute and explain, and we can have a debate about that.
Yeah, sure. I hope you can hear me, Martin.
We can. How you doing, Mark?
Very good. Thanks for putting this together. Very interesting way to spend lunchtime. Really appreciate chatting to everybody here. Yeah, so nitrogen, I worked for a nitrogen service company for a little over 20 years and used nitrogen as a preservation method, you know, for pipe, valve, vessels, and some compression equipment as it was coming into the sites, mainly on FPSOs and things like that. And the hazard is obviously that, you know, at some point that equipment leaves your care, custody and control, and even you can tag it and you can label it as much as you like. It's then going onto a construction site and it's carrying a hazard within it. You know, the fact that it's asphyxiant and it may be under a slight positive pressure, you know, those things are, you know, they're ever present. The other thing about nitrogen is if you don't dry that piece of equipment beforehand and you put the nitrogen afterwards, you've largely just wasted your money. So nitrogen, putting nitrogen into a piece of equipment arbitrarily isn't actually going to do anything with you unless you've removed the water first. So the act of removing the water is best done with air. And if you're going to do that with air and you dry it correctly, then air, I would suggest, is probably the least hazardous method. And the other thing that somebody else talked about is VCIs at that point, Simon. That's, you know, really valid. You know, I switched from using nitrogen after many years to using a combination of VCIs and air to achieve pretty good preservation results.
Excellent. Good. Thank you very much. Anybody got any other questions at all? We can unmute if you have.
Michael was asking about the software, the check sheets being replaced by tablets in the field.
That's right.
So I've guessed the answer there, that I'm pretty sure we can use tablets for our software as well.
Yes, that's correct. Yep. Yeah, we have a full-blown app that ties into our software that allows you to complete mobile check sheets. So it takes the paper format, converts it over to a more appropriate mobile format. You fill it out on the mobile device, and then you put it back basically on the check sheet with the paper check sheet. So it looks the way all the paper ones do.
Good.
Yep.
Okay. I think you've been addressing on the go, Ronnie. I see you've been chatting away there, addressing the points as well, so that's good.
Somebody's got to do
Any
the work.
comments from you? Any comments from you?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, who's that?
This is Crawford.
Hello, Crawford. How are you doing, sir?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. Now, thanks for doing this, but just going back to all this, when it's good what we've got here, but I think what needs to happen is you've got to set your plan out early. I said, irrespective of what system you're going to use to do it, database, are you going to be using VCIs, you're using air nitrogen. It's all about setting out your contract when you set up your job, whether you're coming from a commissioning point of view, which a lot of us do, or the end product to this. So it's about, you know, getting your division of responsibilities matrix, who's doing what, getting your strategy together, what's the contractor responsible for, what am I as a client or the client representative responsible for in doing that, because what we're finding is the best processes in the world are fine, but it's the people that execute them and the oversight. So the self-verification oversight's big as well. But when you deal with some of these big yards, the Korean yards, the Chinese yards, everybody down to the level of a technician as a contracts manager, they know the contract backwards. So you've got to get it down up front. You've got to get it wrote down. And that's the only way you'll execute it and have a chance to do it. Otherwise, if you try and introduce something midway through or change it, you're just opening yourself up.
Yeah. No, quite well
Good
made.
point.
Yeah. And maybe you do this, what we're doing today. Once you've got your stage one done, your planning, your execution plan, you've got to get it out there, get it to all the teams, no matter where you're working. So yeah, good point. Awareness is king. Be all and end all.
Well said, Crawford.
Anybody else? Well, if there is, you know, we can always chat away post meeting, and this is not the first time we're going to be doing this. We'll be doing it again as well. So, okay, we'll just go on to the actionable takeaways if everybody's okay with that. So, you know, this has just been is somebody there, or is that somebody just coughing? I think we're okay. Yeah, okay. So the actionable takeaways. We've gone through a very kind of helicopter view, high level of preservation. But now it's time to start thinking about your particular situation and on your plant and equipment. So, you know, hopefully after this, you'll be able to go back and look with a different pair of eyes to say, okay, well, from all this equipment, there's different levels. What does require preservation? And is there a formal preservation plan in place? And if there isn't, well, maybe it's time that you brought that up and let's get one in place. Once we do that, you know, do you have a software tool to manage the process effectively? Yes or no? Do you need one? Do you not need one? You've seen one there, you know, that's available. And this is the big crux of the matter. You know, what is the cost of not managing preservation correctly? You know, so everybody says, okay, well, we haven't got a budget for it, we haven't got time for it. But actually, if you don't do it, what is the impact? Like Ronnie says, some of these items could be really long lead items. If they don't work when it's time that the project's back on track, we could be looking at, you know, 2 days, 2 months, 2 years, who knows? This could really affect production. So, you know, I think the last takeaway is this is a really, really important subject. I think you've got a point, Andrew, on that. You were mentioning before? Drew?
Yeah. I brought an article a couple of, I think it was almost a year and a half ago. Someone did a case study. They had a facility they were building over in Africa, so the logistics were challenging to start with. And they did a cost analysis of a couple of their projects over there, one that was using preservation, one that was not. The preservation program cost them a certain amount of money up front. You have to manage it, the software, the people to do it. But they spent it was way over 10 times that amount on the site where they did not have preservation, because they were having to replace equipment, and then the logistics and the cost of getting the equipment in there, the schedule slips. It was a really good article and really spelled out the true cost of not doing preservation, or to that point, not doing good preservation. You definitely pay for it in the end if you don't pay for it up front. So.
Good point. Right, Crawford, what have your point?
Yeah, actually, it's funny because it kind of segues into what you were saying there. Something it's also is about getting the people in early on the job, right? But it's about getting the right people. I've seen too often that when you're on a project, who's got to do preservation, and they just go pluck somebody at the air who's looking for somewhere to go with no home, and you end up with somebody that's not got the passion or the expertise for it. So what can snooker you early on in a project is if you've not got the right person leading your preservation and setting it up, because that's what will hit you there. And if you start off with a bad plan and bad practices and bad preservation, then when you get to the sharp end of the stick, you're going to be completely behind the 8 ball. So again, it's about getting that to your project management, to your PGMs, project directors. And there's a lot of good people out there that do preservation. In fact, I've got 2 of the guys for BP that on this call that are doing great work for us and having preservation, and they actually are passionate about it. So having somebody that wants to do it and cares about it will get you there just as well.
Perfect.
That's very important. Yeah, well said.
Yeah.
So the way that the cost is measured, generally speaking, it comes down to apportioning some form of blame associated with delayed startup, and that's ruthless, because the accountants tend to take the view that it's a day's production at the best production the forecast for this year. So if it's $2 million a day, that's, if you're delayed for a week, they're saying that's $14 million it's cost you, you know. So it's quite ruthless. Anyway.
Okay. So next steps, unless there's any further questions, now's the time. But next steps. So what everybody, my dog's on his back here with his legs in the air, making a noise, so apologies for that. But the next steps is that everybody on the call will get an email. We're not going to spam you at all. There's just one email with the PDF slide pack. So you'll get all the slides. An invitation to an online demo. If this has been of any use to you on the software side, we can arrange. That was a very high level kind of, this is what it does, guys. But if you want to kick the tires, we can do a demo on TrackerRune if it's of any use to you. And then Ronnie, also as part of his Intrex training services, he runs a 1-day preservation course. So it's a certified course as well. So there's an exam and what have you. Ronnie can talk about that in a minute. If that's something of interest, it can be tailored to suit the company as well. And then also on the email, there'll be an invitation to this Lunch and Learn rerun. And that's for when you go back and you might think, damn, I wish we could have shown Bill in the warehouse this kind of Lunch and Learn. So it's just an invitation there that you can share with people. And if you could share, that's all part of this community that we're trying to promote as well. So we'd appreciate anything that you can do there to spread the good word. This is Ronnie's online preservation course. So just a quick one on that, Ronnie, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'm not going to read right through this, but it's suffice to say that there's a sufficient amount of information there that can be handed over on the day, and it makes people a little bit more attentive if you put an exam at the end of the day, so that they have to show that they've taken an interest in the information that they've been subject to.
And it contributes to your continuous professional development as well, sir.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's available.
Okay. I think we've got a good question here from Grant, Mr. McDonald. This is like a Hogmanay rerun. Where are you, Mr. McDonald? Can you unmute?
Yeah, right here, Martin. How's it going?
How are you doing, Grant? Nice to thank you
wonderful.
for taking part.
No problem.
You had a question, sir.
Yeah, you mentioned the demo for the tracking for the preservation suite. Have you got any demos for the Tracker DB?
Yes. Yes, we have.
Yeah. If you can hook me up with one of them, that would be great.
I shall do that, sir. Thank you for that. Nice to speak to you after all these years. And Mr. Sherwood from Calgary. I don't know if you want to unmute, Lyndon.
I did. Can you hear me, Martin? How you doing?
Yes, fine, thank you. Are you shoveling snow still, or are you okay?
No, we're warmed up to a balmy +3 today or something. So.
Oh, nice one, Lyndon. Yeah, well, thanks for joining in, man. You got a question?
Yeah, you see my question. So quite often people say, "Oh, we can't justify the cost. It's not worth it. We'll just do this, we'll do that, whatever, right?" And obviously, folks like us have a different view of things. But like a sort of minimum tag count, like when somebody says that, how do I challenge back and say, well, you've got this X many tags, you should look at it. Is there any thoughts around that?
Guys, Ronnie, any comment? Andrew?
Yeah, I wouldn't so much go off a tag count as the actual cost of the equipment. So if you're just doing a small upgrade project or something like that, where you're upgrading some instrumentation where the cost is fairly low, yeah, probably not worth it. But if you're getting into motors and items, switchgear, that type of deal, tag count may come into play for complexity, but mainly the type of equipment that you're looking at installing, I think, would be the driving factor there. Always trying to liken it to the cost of, I was in charge of getting the technology on a project, and one of those things was getting the copiers that we use in the startup group. That copier cost us $1,800 a month. So nobody even bats an eye at that. But when you tell them software is $2,900 or $3,000, then they lose their mind. So I understand the question there, but
Yeah. Good response, good answer, great. Thank you.
no problem.
If I could interject real quick, guys, I think one of the key points there, Lyndon, as well as Andrew, is obviously a key point is having the availability of a program like this within your preservation program for your company. So I know Andrew and Martin and you guys, obviously selling a product like this, that's one of the big things you would push. And if you're within a group that has the availability to the software, then, at that point in time, you may not have some limitations as far as tag count and cost once you've already have it implemented, because obviously we all have our horror stories as far as what we've had issues with in the past from lack of preservation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. Good to hear you, Brad.
You as well, Lyndon. Hope you're well, buddy.
Yeah, hope you were well too.
This is turning into a CPS session. Guys, you need to come to CPS, October the 2nd. The networking and just seeing everybody is fantastic. Yeah, so let's try and make it, please. Okay, well, I think if everybody's kind of dried up with the questions, that's just been a little over an hour now. So thanks very much for attending. It's been great for us, for sure. And time to wash up. I see there's a plate there that needs washing up. That's generally my job. Please do us a favor. You know, we're not shy on LinkedIn, as you well know, but please, when you see the post, just do what you're doing. Just kind of support us. We're all in it together, and we're very keen on this community, and we want to develop it for sure. And this is not the first time we'll do a lunch and learn. I think this has been okay. It's been a good first time. And we'll have another topic next time. We're thinking about other topics, but this was so topical because of all the mothballing that's going on. So please spread the good word for us, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks very much, guys. All the best for now.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Everybody keep safe.
Yeah, keep safe.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Bye-bye.